I'm Adam. I work down in the Cheltenham office for Context. You can see I'm heavily involved in forensics, but not just forensics, sort of endpoint security, sort of in general as well. The main area of work that I'm going to be talking to you about in this presentation is sort of a response. So the incident response is obviously one of the things that Context does. And as the name implies, it's about us reacting. It's about us responding to a client that picks up the phone or sends us an email or in some way makes contact with us to say, bad things are happening. So how do people find out, how do organizations find out that actually they have been pwned, popped, breached? So third-party notification is really, really common. Maybe you get an email from CERT, you get something from GovCert, some official body contacts you to say you might want to have a look over here at this server. Yep, so some sort of third party. Another third party might be an independent researcher who's found something on your network or in your piece of software, or whatever it is that is your IP. Someone's found a weakness in it, they report it. Great stuff. Your bank might inform you. That's probably really bad news if your bank are informing you because something's probably up with your money. You might get this kind of information that tells you that you've been breached. For those of you that aren't quite sure what that is, that's basically a ransomware pop-up on the screen that says, hey, we've just encrypted all your files, pay us lots of money. Again, these are what we see for real at Context. These are the ways that people know they've been compromised. Hopefully, you've got your own tool that tells you that a breach is happening or has just happened, something that's alerting you, your SOC data, your SOC dashboards are lighting up saying, hey, bad stuff is happening. So hopefully it's internal and you're seeing it yourselves before anybody tells you. I'm going to pause there just for a second. I'm going to pause and ask you some rhetorical questions as we go through. So rhetorical question number one is, if this was happening in your environment right now, if there was a breach going on in your environment, in your networks, what is it, have a think about it in your head, that would probably tell you first? You have to just, okay, this system would light up, this system would light up. If you can't think of anything, you've probably got a problem. Okay, so those are the reasons the ways we come to find out that people have been breached. How do those breaches happen? So in these, these scenarios that Context have been dealing with, these response engagements, what is it that's actually caused the breach? And when we can get down to it and we do the investigation, we go, okay, this is how the breach happened. What happens? It's a phishing email. It's always a phishing email. It's always Doris and Accounts who's clicked on that link. Yeah, it's still up there as one of the main ways. We heard Mark talk about it earlier. It's one of the things they do with great success is send carefully crafted emails. That's not a carefully crafted email. Well, it's not bad, actually. It's definitely seen worse. But it's still something that we see all the time, even from people that are in organizations where they complete phishing awareness training, people that are switched on, people that are techies. It's got to be just right. I wonder if the techies in the room, those of you that will identify as being a techie, how many of you have had an email that's been like PayPal or eBay, and it nearly got you? Nearly got you, like this close. Yeah, I can put my hand up, definitely. Yeah, just that last minute you go, oh, no, hang on a minute, let me check. Yeah, it still happens. Drive-by downloads. This is kind of a generic term. What I mean by that is you've gone to a website or you've been engineered to get you to a website and somehow a file's been delivered to your system. Okay. I kind of include in that kind of Trojan downloads where you're downloading something and it's not what it appears to be, or it's got some sort of Trojan horse mechanism going on. It's another one. Malvertising. We've seen this a lot recently. There's been some big breaches for large websites, popular websites that were delivering malicious adverts to vulnerable versions of Flash Player and this sort of stuff. So malvertising is what we see. And it's really, really depressing to say cross-site scripting and SQL injection. The important thing is cross-site scripting in January 2000, this has been around for a long time, cross-site scripting and SQL injection. We are still seeing it in 2016, people having their corporate websites compromised because of input validation. If this happens, it's because you haven't included security in the consideration of the design from the front, and you probably, well, almost certainly haven't had the web app tested. Okay? But that pretty much covers it. So in 18 months, 2 years, so with response engagements, these are all the things. Are they the complicated things that Mark's been talking about on his red teams when we sneak in via this method, blah, blah? Not really. It's still about getting those basics right. Okay. So this is the bit where I go off away from sort of context experience and talk about some stats from somewhere else, because everybody likes some stats. I like some stats. This one comes from Mandiant. This is their M Trends document from 2016. It's publicly available. Go and download it. It's a really interesting read. But there's a highlight for you. Okay, so just take a second to have a look at that. So the red, external notification of breach. So 53% of the investigations that Mandiant know about were informed by someone other than the organization. They come from outside. Yeah, 47% obviously therefore internal. That's kind of, that's 50-50 pretty much. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so you're just as likely to find it internally as be informed from an external. But what is particularly interesting, of course, at the bottom here. So this is obviously the 2016 report, so it's reflecting back on 2015. So all Mandiant investigators. This is median time of compromise to discovery. Yeah, median time. Say that again. Median time of compromise to discovery. 146 days. If it's is the medium. If it's externally notified, 320 days. How quick is quick enough? Somebody asked in the middle here earlier on. We'll get onto that in a minute. Yeah. So half of them notified externally, 320 days. The other half that notified internally, 56 days. Shocking. Which half are you in? Okay. Oh, this is Verizon. This comes from Verizon's 2016 report. Again, fascinating read. It's publicly available. Get out there, read it. It's really, really good. I would criticize this diagram. This graph, which I'm showing you because it's interesting, it took me about 4 reads to get my head around what it was actually telling me. So, the percent of breaches where time to compromise, which is the green one, or the time to discovery, which is the blue one, was days or less. I'll read it again. Percent of breaches where time to compromise, the green one, or time to discovery, the blue one, was days or less. Okay, so we can take the green line for a second. So this is the compromise line. So in 2005, we're seeing, so that's, what's that? Is that telling me that that's just, is that trying to tell me that's just below 70? I think so. Yeah, so in 2005, about 70% of compromises happened within days. So by the fact that the line is going up, the percentages are going up, means that the compromises are happening quicker. Similarly, the blue line, which is a discovery, is also going up, which means the discovery is happening quicker. But as you can tell, the blue line is not going up as quickly as the green line. So we are discovering them quicker, but they're also compromising us quicker than we are discovering them. So it's getting worse. It's getting better, but it's getting worse faster. That's a quote. I need to tweet that later. Okay. All right. Still from the Verizon 2016. Excuse me. So this is to actually answer the question of how fast is fast enough. The top bar chart, so the N, you can see the N there is 1177. So that's the number we're talking about. And this top bar is how quick to compromise. So from just over 1,000 incidents investigated, how quick was the compromise? 11% of them, it happened in seconds. So how quick is quick enough? 11% of the time, it needs to happen in seconds. 81%, by far the most, in minutes. So 4 out of 5, the compromise happens between delivery of payload or whatever it might be to compromise, it happens within minutes. To me, in my eyes, that's someone clicking a link in an email, I think. And then the rest, days, weeks, months, well, there isn't any for years, doesn't take that long. The rest are less than 1%. And then exfiltration, so that's just compromise. This is exfiltration, so getting whatever it is they want to get out. You can see it yourselves. So in 7.1% of the time, they've exfilled the data within seconds. Ow, okay. And you can see by the time we get to days, where we've covered off, bang, almost 100% of it. So it's quick. Okay. So things are getting better, but they're still bad. As Mark talked about, we are seeing the defenders do a better job. They are getting better. We're now seeing SOCs. We're seeing people do this thing properly. But still, the biggest thing that I write in my reports, when I write those reports to say, here's what happened, here's how they got in, the biggest thing that the organizations fail to do time and time again is secure the endpoint. They've got all sorts of network perimeter, IPS, IDS, and they've got source fires and fire amps and blah, 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 blah. And they all do an excellent job at what they do. But they all seem to forget to secure the endpoint. They put antivirus on it, and that's what they've done. That's it. Walk away. Thanks. Got AV. Great. AV does a particular job. So the rest of this rant is going to be about securing the endpoint. Okay? Why the endpoint? Because those things that I mentioned earlier, the cross-site scripting, the SQL injection, the malvertising, the drive-by downloads, the phishing, all those things that the red team guys are trying to do is to get a presence on the endpoint, to get on there so that they can start executing their code and moving laterally and doing all that good, juicy stuff. So they've got to get on the endpoint. So actually the endpoint is the focus of where the bad stuff's got to happen eventually. Eventually it's got to end up there because that's where they issue the commands. Okay. And if you don't believe me, take Sue Marquette Parumba's word, because she says, she's not here, is she? Imagine that. Imagine if Sue had been here. Until endpoints are controlled, early breach detection remains difficult. I couldn't agree more, Sue. You're a woman after my own heart. She's basically just summarizing those two reports, the Mandiant and the Verizon, to say, I was picking out that bit in the middle there. The median number of days that attackers were present on a victim's network before being discovered dropped to 146 days in 2015 from 205 days in 2014. So that's great. That's a really good improvement, but it's still 146 days. It's a long time. And bearing in mind, in the worst case scenario, it takes some minutes to compromise and exfil your data. Okay. So I'm kind of just echoing what I just said there. I'm not saying that if you install a good endpoint protection solution that you're done and you can put your feet up and all's good. You need those other devices. It's defense in depth. Some threats are simply better suited to being found in network traffic. Yeah. So I'm just reading out here. The network security appliances have been around longer, so they are more mature. There are more threat intel feeds, this sort of thing, although endpoint protection is catching up quickly. But I don't want anyone to come and say, oh, Adam at Context said I can throw away my IPS and my IDS. Did not say that at all. So, give you some examples. I talked about what Context see at the coalface. Real life. Here we go. So, a financial assistant receives an email. It is a big, sorry, I'm doing this because it's a big screen. Receives an email with a link to an invoice shared via Dropbox. You know what's coming already. Yeah, you can already know what's happening. This particular finance person knew their stuff. Like, this was a younger person, was switched on to sort of IT security generally. They were trained, they're just aware of cybersecurity. So this isn't a novice, this is someone who is switched on. But this is a finance person. They spend their whole day working with invoices, so an email containing an invoice is a perfectly normal, expected thing for them to receive. The user clicks the link, downloads a zip file. Fine, the invoice is in a zip file. That would probably be my first alarm, to be honest, but okay, fine. The zip file contains a file which has an Adobe Acrobat icon, and the terms invoice and PDF are in the file somewhere. You all probably guessing already that at the end of the file name was .pdf.exe. Yeah. Thinking it's a PDF, the user double clicks on it. Game over. Yeah, we all know the story. In fact, it's malware disguised as a PDF. Remote control malware, by the way, well, I say malware. The remote control malware was TeamViewer. Is installed, intellectual property is stolen, and it's held to ransom. That's what they did. They said, we've got all this data. If you don't pay us our ransom, we're going to leak it to public domain and just let all your information go. Okay. So think of that example we've just been through there. What have you got in your systems back at the office that would have stopped that, what have you got? The email doesn't contain a known bad. There's no, it's not a it's not a blacklisted domain. All these tricks that Mark talked about for the red teaming. Yep, the email gets through, it's clean as a whistle. If it's a zero-day exploit, this one wasn't anywhere near as sophisticated as that, but if it is some sort of zero-day, your email provider, so whichever, your email security team, probably aren't going to block it. AV isn't going to block it, especially if it's a team viewer. If it's a well-written email and a well-chosen, or perhaps luckily chosen, target, it's frequently not detected by the user. So in this perfect storm, it was an invoice for someone who deals with invoices. And Dropbox isn't blocked. Question back to you. Is Dropbox blocked on your networks? Is there a business case for it? If there isn't a business case for it, you should probably block it. Launching executables from the temp folder isn't blocked. So in this example, when they clicked on the zip file, it opened in WinZip. They then double-clicked on the PDF, and that launched. So that was an exe launching from a temp folder on the system. No, just no. There's no good reason for exes to be being launched from a temp folder. That should be blocked. If your network back at the ranch is not blocking that, there better be a darn good reason why not. Okay. This is a rule taken from Carbon Black kind of watch lists. We'll talk about those very briefly in a second, but essentially, the behaviors I'm talking about, so X application launches Y application, this is where sort of endpoint protection comes in. So what we saw here, or we're detecting here, is WinZip is the parent. So WinZip has launched something, and that something is not in the WinZip folder, because that's a process being launched by WinZip, or at least where the parent process is WinZip. So that's probably a process coming out of a zip file. Try doing that without endpoint. Try triggering on that behavior with your network appliance, with your whatever it is you're trying to achieve without an endpoint protection. And if you've got one, tell me later. Okay, so this is a screenshot of Carbon Black, which we use. And what I'm kind of pointing out here, these are the watch lists. So here down the left-hand side is our list of essentially behaviors, things to look for, things that are suspicious or known bad or we want more interest in. Okay, so this is, and the one that's highlighted in blue there is newly executed applications. Back to our finance person. That exe that was from the zip file, there's no way, or hopefully no way, that that executable had ever been seen before on the network. So most of the time, in your environments, it's probably really rare that something new, a whole new process comes along. Yeah, you're doing Word, you're doing Excel, you're doing PowerPoint, you're doing all that stuff that everybody does day in, day out. How often is it that actually a whole new exe comes along? It's really rare. Yeah, by having an alert on that, great. Newly installed applications, file mods to web routes. Yeah, these things which you can do on an endpoint, or if you've got access to this mass collection of endpoints. Okay. And this is just to show what your analyst sees. So you've got your SOC analyst. Fine, I've got all this data swirling through my endpoint protection solution. Your analyst has a dashboard to work from. Okay, I'm going to move on. A real life number 2 example. This is a screenshot from Carbon Black again. This is showing Carbon Black drilling down on a process. So you can see various things are blacked out, but look at that one. Running for 7 hours, and the last activity was 8 minutes ago. Bear in mind that to get this screenshot, so this is a screenshot, to get this screenshot, it means our analysts must have had eyes on this quickly to be able to get the screenshot. And that is the truth, that is the fact. So we had eyes on a process within 7 hours, looking at it because it was suspicious. It's actually a little bit cooler than that, because the start time of this process was 2:50 in the morning, plus 7 hours, 9:50 in the morning. The analyst starts work at 9:30, so actually within 20 minutes, the analyst has eyes on the malicious process. 20 minutes. It's still slow if the exfil is happening inside seconds, but to be honest, 7 hours would be awesome. If you could go back to your, the bosses back and say, we can start reviewing malicious processes in 7 hours, they'd be very happy with that. If you can say you can start reviewing it in 20 minutes, they'd be even happier. Of course, this is dependent on having the right watch list and knowing the behaviors to look for, but this is real life. This really happened. We had eyes on malicious activity within 20 minutes of the analysts firing up the dashboard, and then we can kick off the remediation and all that good stuff. This is just analyst candy. So any analysts in the room, you can just start seeing processes that will rock up. MS Office dropper. So this is, if an Office application spawns another process, might be legit. There's some updating that goes on and maybe some legitimate macros and stuff. But yeah, probably worth checking out. PlugX, if you know what that is, you'll find that amusing. If you don't worry. Domain admin enumeration, something that they talked about in the red teaming, enumerating domain stuff. What was the other one? At jobs. Scheduled tasks was talked about. At jobs are scheduled tasks. Okay, I'm going to move on. So how long before detection? Clients rarely have eyes on 24/7. We don't. I'd probably have a couple, but I'm struggling to think of them, that actually have a 24/7 SOC. Oh yeah, I can think of some. But it's rare, okay? So a typical working flow is to come in the morning and review what happened overnight. It's probably where you work, it's probably what happens unless you have got 24/7 coverage. Yeah, in that example I just talked about, that real life example, the Carbon Black watch lists, it was really obvious. Those at jobs were happening, Office droppers. When you log onto the analyst dashboard and you see these watch lists lit up like a Christmas tree, the analyst can be looking at stuff that's bad immediately. Okay, so it's all the time. So this endpoint security is about reducing the time to start looking at and investigating the problem. And as you saw there, last activity on that screenshot from Carbon Black, the last activity I think was 8 minutes ago. That's pretty darn close to real time. Actually, it can be quicker than that. There is a slight processing delay with something like Carbon Black. Any endpoint solution's got to do its chunking through the data. But you're talking minutes. Well, in some cases, seconds, actually. And whilst we're doing that, so we've got a context analyst is in front of that dashboard, looking at the alerts, and bang, 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 bang. We're on the phone already with the client saying we're looking at this, and we've already got that dialogue going straight away. Yeah, because we know we can look at it in real time, so we can get that dialogue going with the client. This is the server in question. This is the IP address. Start locking it down. Can we take it offline? Get that dialogue going already, and we can speed up the remediation. Excuse me. Speed up the remediation. Okay. The ultimate speedy remediation is to not have to remediate. Yeah. So a high-quality endpoint protection solution should be able to prevent as well as alert. Application whitelisting is basically what I'm talking about. You should be, on your endpoints, can any executable run from the temp folder or from the desktop or from app data or from temporary internet files? How are you pinning down what executables can and can't run? Yeah. So Carbon Black, just as an example, yeah, it can send out instructions to say to an endpoint, kill that process. That process is not allowed to run. Kill it now. If it's a known bad hash, like you can block it before it even launches. If you haven't got endpoint security, you're relying on your firewalls, your IPS, your IDS, your AV, your Windows event log to investigate the forensics, disk memory, et cetera, et cetera. So you could do most of the stuff that you would get from endpoint protection with traditional stuff, but it's going to be a lot slower, a lot slower. Okay. This tweet was from June 29th, tweeting about the Splunk report. So this is really recent, as in we're only talking a week or two old. This is, so Splunk is in these, can't call them a SIEM, they're a SIEM. So surveyed 400 large companies. Each of them had over 1,000 employees in either UK, France, Germany, Sweden, and the Netherlands. While most organizations understood the need for basics, Firewall and antivirus software, most don't feel the need to reinforce that, as in the AV and the firewall, with analytics or anomaly detection. Now, if you've got your endpoint protection suite monitoring your entire network and it's seeing this process over here, this process over there, communication with this network appliance over here, connecting to this bad domain over there, you've got whatever, 1,000, 10,000 endpoints, all creating statistics for you, which your analysts will love to mine and find out all the weird, interesting things that are happening on the network. Security breaches are inevitable. Yeah, all right, I'll give them that one. Just. Nearly a third of respondents do not use basic methods of breach detection, and less than a fifth have any form of security analytics in place. Was your organization one of the 400 that was surveyed? Okay, so in summary, endpoint protection has an obvious and important place. I will stand by that comment. If you do not have endpoint protection in your organization is lacking in something critical. It does complement other techs, yeah, the IDS, the IPS, the AV, full packet capture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't replace them, it complements them. What we're after is cutting down this time to identify compromised hosts, and therefore obviously cutting down time to remediate. It's almost the last slide. The last slide actually has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, but I really wanted to bring it up. And I knew I'd have a captive audience of some people that will get just another rant. We hear this a lot, and it makes me cry inside. I don't care if they break into our network, we don't have anything worth stealing. That's almost certainly not true, because you're a business doing business things. So that's almost certainly not true. But let's assume, just for a second, we'll grant them that's fine. I can't even think of an example. They do something where they don't have anything worth stealing. Let's grant them that as a, okay, fine, we'll accept that. You have users, right? You have at least one employee in your organization. So do you log into personal email? Do they use Facebook? Do they on LinkedIn? Do they do online banking? Yeah, we all know that malware exists, e.g. Dridex, from the top of my head, to steal those precise credentials. That's what they're aiming to do. Stuff like Dridex doesn't care what your business does or if it does nothing at all, because they're after people's information, your online banking creds or your Facebook creds or your whatever it is that's nothing to do with your business. Yeah, so there is still a risk. DPA, Data Protection Act. If you lose a load of HR data, yeah, PPI, and you lost it, you've got some explaining to do to the Information Commissioner, and probably a fine. They might not be interested in your infrastructure. They might not care what you do. They might want somewhere to pivot their activity. They've actually got another target in mind. You just happen to be in the supply chain to that particular target organization. So you might be a nice middleman for them to target. Yeah, they don't care what you do particularly. You're just a nice pivoting place. And finally, just general slowness. If you've got your systems are riddled with malware because you've got poor practices, poor cybersecurity hygiene, your system is going to slow down. I know it's perhaps the least exciting one, but your users are frustrated enough by how long it takes Word to load. Yeah, if they're running malware as well, not going to go down well.